Well, hello, BookTube, and welcome to this fantastic extravaganza we've got for you this evening. We've got two old coots digging archaeology, and we're joined
Mind your
by
tongue, young man.
we're joined by titans of our little BookTube community here. We've got Mark Richardson with us from Richardson Reads, and Sean D. Standfast from his channel, Sean D. Standfast. So, Mark, we're going to start with you. Give us a bit of a insight into your archaeological life.
All right. Well, I started off like most folks reading it, and then obviously Indiana Jones and all that. There was the movies and all that. So I had a sort of a romantic notion of what archaeology was, and I went to the University of New Mexico and studied there, and under Louis Binford, who Sean will know who that is, and ended up really liking the modern theory of archaeology. So I study a lot of theory, laboratory stuff. I don't have as much field excavation experience as Sean does. I have done some. So I was in the Southwest, obviously. I've done some stuff in Ohio and Moldavia, what was then Soviet Union, all over there. So that's basically the travels I've made. Europe would have been mostly in the Soviet Union.
Okay. And you said you went to university in the Southwest. Is the Southwest of the US a particular hotbed for archaeology study?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah. So, the Southwest is historically a big center in the United States for the development of archaeology also. It's a lot of cliff dwellings, which I used to say quiff dwellings. So I had to work my way through that one when you give a few papers at school. So, but we had, Mesa Verde is a very famous site, so I got a lot of hands-on experience that way, but yeah.
Excellent. And Sean, how did you get into it?
Well, yeah, it's the same thing. Doing reading of archaeology and watching documentaries, and one of the biggest ones that sort of made me really want to go was Michael Wood's Search for the Trojan War. Is that correct? Yeah, In Search of the Trojan War. I got sort of blanked on the title for a second. That documentary was great, and I went to university in Canada. And I started out in Near Eastern archaeology, so I eventually went to Jordan for field school, and then while I was there, after I went to Egypt, and I excavated a little bit there, a few days in a few places, just to sort of stick my trowel into the ground, I guess, as you were. And then when I came back, I eventually switched to North American archaeology, and I worked for mostly a salvage company, and just in front of, literally at times in front of a bulldozer, hoping you get the excavation done before the bulldozer bulldozes over you, not to mention the artifacts.
And Mark was mentioning the cave dwellings and things in western United States. What about in your native Canada then? Is there a large amount of archaeological material to be discovered, or?
Well, it's mostly prehistoric, and you don't see it. So you're lucky if you get some pottery, but it's mostly lithics, and sometimes ground stone tools, which are quite cool. But mostly it's just lithics. It's what's left over from making an arrowhead or an axe or something like that. But then we also do historical. There's historic, especially for the companies that I worked for, we would excavate pioneer dwellings. The funnest part was to dig a privy hole. And for those people who don't know what a privy hole is, it's an outhouse, and it would be the place to throw in your garbage. So you'd be digging through somebody's 150-year-old. Yes.
Only 150-year-old though.
Well, yeah. Well, 18. You could get back to the early 1800s if you were lucky, but that's a bit.
Oh, did
or historical.
Mhm. And Mark, you mentioned being in Moldova, in the former Soviet Union.
Yep.
What was there to excavate or investigate?
Well, I wasn't excavating when I was in Moldavia. I was in a Soviet school as a guest of theirs, studying lithic use-wear analysis. So if you're using the lithics to work bone or your work, you know that sort of thing. So my specialty is stone tools. So I would use low power microscopes, intentionally low power, and that was actually a technique invented by the Soviets under a guy named Semenov, and I studied there under Madame Karabkova, who ran the place like a military barracks, and then a professor named Masson, who was famous in Eurasian archaeology.
I got an image of Rosa Klebs from the James Bond films. There, you know the
Yeah,
when you said that. So
we marched in order. Let me put it that way.
and I mean, you mentioned a little bit about a technique the Soviets invented. What were some of the big differences between experiencing archaeology in the Soviet Union compared to the USA?
It was really different. The big difference being, of course, when I was there, the Soviet Empire decided to be no more. So a lot of what I went through was not archaeological. It ended up being a very chaotic time. They were wonderful hosts, and obviously had a different perspective, right? But we had a lot of archaeologists from around the world there. I remember Olga Sofer, who does Pleistocene stuff. So they were fascinating, but they had a different focus than we did.
Okay. And what were you doing in Jordan then, Sean?
I was on a field school, an Iron Age site called Tal Jawa. There's two sites actually called Tal Jawa, but I wasn't on the more famous one, which is called the Basalt City. It still sort of has more or less some structures, but made of basalt, which is a stone from volcanic rock. And it's quite neat, but this was just an Iron Age. It's no longer there because there's now a subdivision there. It was an Iron Age tell, and I was excavating a storeroom. That's where I was there, and then I did travels around Jordan and trying to get into a neighboring country. Two neighboring countries, we'll say. We may get to that a bit later.
And you mentioned Jordan, of course. Did you visit Petra?
No, I didn't get to Petra. I wanted to, but while everybody else on the field school that I went that I was there with went to Petra, and I was getting tired of the group, I guess, to a certain extent, as people do. So I and a few other people that were staying at the ACOR, which is the American Center of Oriental Research, rented one of their Toyota sort of little pickup trucks that had an extra seat in the back. And so we just drove around and drove to the north and stayed at places and, sleeping in tombs outside on a Ottoman roof of an old Ottoman farmhouse that was at Case, which is I forget the name of the biblical city now, but it's apparently where Jesus sent the moneylenders, turned them into pigs and sent them running down into the Galilee.
Begins with a G, doesn't it?
Yeah, Gadara. Is it Gadara?
It's escaping me right now.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, but
the Gadarene swine. Yeah, it's the Gadarene swine, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Are you sure it was a Ottoman farmhouse and not an Ottoman outhouse, given your earlier admission?
It was big enough that I could lay down on the roof and have lots of space. Okay. So yeah, it was. Yeah, because otherwise we were gonna we were gonna sleep in a tomb again that night, but the person who was taking care of that said, no, come on, and took us up to the roof, and that's where we stayed for the night. And we went to sleep with watching the lights of Tiberias across the Sea of Galilee.
Very nice.
Mm-hmm. And Mark, where did you go after the Soviet Union then?
Well, I ended up. It's a funny thing. I am the son of an Anglican priest, and when I was so I had no interest in anything like that because my dad did it. I automatically didn't want to do it, and when I was in Moldavia, I visited at caves that were carved out of limestone and were some of the earliest churches, and they're amazing. So the altar would be what was excavated around. They're all bright white inside. They're quite stunning. And I sort of fell in love with Byzantine stuff, Byzantine art. And I went to grad school, and I have 2 different degrees in. I have a master's in theology and a master's in divinity. That I was interested in church history. So that I shifted focus as a result of that trip. And did some biblical archaeology stuff, but for the most part, it was a history of early Christianity.
Excellent.
Which led me to get another degree in library science because I never make up my mind about anything.
What's the next degree going to be in?
I think I'm done. I'm running out of time. My eventual thing will be sleeping in a tomb.
Which might be excavated in a few hundred years, right?
So. That's right. And that if there's an outhouse there, I did not do it.
You're going to be buried with your books, or?
That would be. I have requested from my wife quite an elaborate tomb. I'm not going to say what she told me, but.
Well, as I always say, like people say you got too many books, but I always say the person who dies with the most books wins.
That's true. That's true. Now you've given up 17,000 here and 20,000 here and 50,000 there. You need to keep them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but of course, Sean, you run the risk of actually being buried under your books rather than.
Occasionally, yes. But it's what a way to go. It's one of 2 best ways to go.
Do we need to ask the second, or?
Remember a scene like that in Private Benjamin, am I correct?
So, Sean, where did your adventures take you after Jordan?
Well, I went to Egypt, and then I came back to Jordan. But while we were traveling around up north, there was a couple things that were interesting. There was a site I wanted to take a look at. Like it's just because it was a type site. It was the first site of a Chalcolithic. Like it was sort of a Copper Age, if you want to call it that, site. And I think that's right. But anyway, so we were walking around on this, and then all of a sudden these, Jordanian army vehicles, drive up, a horn going crazy, screaming at us. Didn't know what, so we walked back out and took a look and spoke to them, see what the problem was, and apparently it was a minefield, and they were just bringing back a new sign to put up. So somehow we walked through a minefield and around and came back and didn't step on anything. So I don't think it was a very good minefield, thankfully.
You had a blast.
Yeah.
I did that in Guantanamo Bay. I come up behind a sign. I see the back of the sign. I look around at it, and it says minefield.
Well, at least you had a sign.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, and then like I say, I tried to get into a few other countries. I would try. I can't. Well, I don't know. I'll try to explain it as best I can. I wanted to go to Israel and to a few places in Israel, but they were changing things a little bit there, and it became an issue. One of the issues, I should say, is that we were already in and had stamped in our passport an Arabic country. So after a little bit of interrogation, we were told, or I was like, I would never be allowed back into the country. And that's all I'm saying about it.
And how much does that wreck your plans? I mean, were you planning on going to Israel sometime in the next?
No, not now, and not after then. But I did have a chance, and I could have gone into Iraq, and this was right after the first Iraq War. And I was able, like, I went to the consulate, the Iraqi consulate, and I actually got to speak to someone, and they took a little while to decide. Like, they didn't decide no right from the beginning, but they finally did. But then, sort of unofficially, I could go there. And then I was thinking of doing that, but the thing that I realized, I didn't have enough money if anything happened to get out. Enough money. So I nixed that, and then I went to Egypt.
And so, Mark, do you still maintain a big interest in archaeology?
Mostly, I don't have my library I used to have. I have a remnant. What I love doing is we have something over here called Acorn. It's a TV service, and it's mostly British shows. And I watch like Digging Britain and stuff like that, which I love. And I thought of that when Sean talks about the salvage archaeology. They had an episode where they're putting through what we would call an interstate and doing some salvage archaeology. So I like the British documentaries. We don't do much for that type of documentary here ourselves. I don't know why, but that's basically where my interest is.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed they put all the old time teams on YouTube, actually, so you can watch, because it's been going for, I think, 20 something years. Yeah, so, and it's great. It gets very addictive as well.
Yeah, I love it.
I don't know, maybe in the States the problem is you have like ancient history, and then I don't know about Native Americans, whether they really left a lot, because I mean, their footprint generally wouldn't have been massive. I mean, they weren't constructing permanent, or were they? I don't know. Were they constructing permanent buildings and things?
Yeah.
They were.
Yeah, Pueblo, Bonito. I mean, there's tons of these. You know, some of these cities are ancient, and then of course, if you go down to Mexico, I've been to the Mayan ruins. I had a professor who was one of the people who mapped Teotihuacan. So yeah, there's lots of there's quite a bit of archaeology of that type, you know, monumental buildings, pyramids, some of them quite old. So yeah, that stuff's all around.
But that's geographically specific, right? I mean, it's more the further south you go within reason, it's more. I mean, you wouldn't get permanent constructions in Canada, for example.
Well, we have mounds, right?
Yeah,
we have the mound builders and huge yeah. You know, so I mean, you have structures even in the Arctic. So you know.
Yeah, well, there's mounds. That's pretty well it for in Canada. There's not a huge, unless you go up into the tundra area, then you get some kind of, you know, rock structures a little bit, but very minor. But the stuff that I was used to with, it's a farmer's field. And at one time, there was a huge village on there. The very first field school excavation I did was at a Huron site, and it was untouched. And my professor had finally, like, you know, it took about 25 or 30 years. He excavated the whole site. And you don't see anything. It's just a plowed field. So you strip off the topsoil, and you've got either, you know, areas where you can see that's red, the earth, and where there was fires, hearths, garbage pits or food pits. But also then you see little things like this, which are the post holes. There's no post left, but there's what's left. You know, the ghost of a post.
The ghost of a post. Wow. I like
that. But yeah, and so that's the kind of stuff. And then for more historical, then you've got a few other things. But but yeah, but yeah, I've never been to the south, but I do want to go to the Anasazi ruins, especially the Four Corners. I really want to go there because there's huge cliff. You got me started with that. Cliff dwellings there, as Mark knows. You've been there probably. I'm sure.
Yeah. For my honeymoon, Deb and I went to the Four Corners because I lived in New Mexico for so long, and I loved the Southwest. So I've got a picture of her with hands and legs covering all 4 states. So that's sort of the thing. They've got like a X there, and you feel silly doing it until you see the next people come in and they do it too. So, yeah. But we drove up to Mesa Verde, and of course, the Four Corners regions, there's huge reservations. And then we also visited the Yakima Sky Pueblo, which is up on a plateau-like thing, and it's an ancient city, but it's still lived in, as is Taos, which is thousands of years old. Some of these places are very ancient, but and still home to the people who were there originally.
And you mentioned Mexico. Have you been further south? Have you been into, I don't know, see Machu Picchu or anything like that? Or?
I have not been to Machu Picchu. I would love to. I've been all over the Caribbean, but that was as a Coast Guardsman and not always welcome. But yeah, I never got to South America at all.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever been tempted to like whip out a trowel when you've been on holiday with your family and be like, oh, I wonder if there's anything?
I was such a theoretical guy that I could probably walk through a lost city and not even know I was there.
So,
Sean, you were more hands-on then.
Yeah, well, yeah, because I enjoyed excavating, and I still have my trowel somewhere here, but yeah, Marshalltown trowel, and it's quite a bit smaller than it started out as. And it's been a few places, and let's try to keep this clean as possible. But one of the field schools I was on, the director used to call he called it the ballet, but it's not quite the same as the ballet. There's a pole that usually is on the stage, so you get the picture. And my trowel has seen a few things around. It got taken away from me a few times while I was in watching the ballet, and it had some adventures on its own.
Oh gosh!
It's the most creative self-editing I've ever heard in my life. Get right up to that border and don't quite cross it, right?
Doesn't leave too much to the imagination, though.
Yeah. Somebody making it worse.
Sorry.
But no, yeah, I enjoyed excavating. That was the thing. I could never do it now. Like I could probably get down on my knees. I need help getting up. That's the state where I am now. And yeah, it was just fun doing that because you never know what you're going to find. And it's just great because I had a trowel, but Mark probably knows. I don't know if it was a common thing, but do you know what a long-handled trowel is?
No. Shovel?
Can I guess?
Yeah. Because we used to doing the salvage, you'd have the long-handled shovel. They're pointed at the end, but you grind it off and you make it sort of flat, and you can get pretty good. You can almost work it as a trowel. And when you're excavating, I could do knife edge corners in my squares eventually with the shovel. And, and you do that. It's like, well, for salvage, you have to do it quickly as well. And you try to get as much as possible. But you could, it's called shovel shining. So.
Yeah, I've seen the guys with the backhoes. Unbelievable.
Yeah, we had some. We had some guy with a grade awl, which was better because it came out straight, so it never pivoted. So he would go like this, and just he could take off like a couple millimeters, like an eighth or a couple eighths of an inch soil, just scrape it back perfectly because we hired him all the time, and he was really good at it.
It's amazing.
And have either of you got any artifacts or things of archaeological? Well, I guess they wouldn't be so significant if you would have them at home, but do you have any spearheads or flint pieces that you've got at home in the cupboard, or? Probably I'm not allowed to ask you, right? Yeah, I just realized. Oh yeah, no. Okay, tell me later.
I used to flint knap a little bit, and I knew a lot of people that did. So I used to have a lot of points, arrowheads or spearheads, whatever. But we just always called them points. And they'd make them. They did it as a hobby. They'd get chert, flint, even obsidian occasionally, and they would make these. And I knew several of them, so I used to have like a few dozen of those at one point.
See, judging by both your reactions when I said that, though, it shows also my own naivety. But so if you found anything you find, in theory, you have to hand over. So you shouldn't really have like a flint arrowhead at home. You would have to give it over to some government department, or I mean, if you found it in the garden, for example, you have to hand these things over, or no?
No, if you're out, I mean, I walk around here. If I see an arrowhead, it's not a big deal. Nobody wants it. They have a million of them.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking. This kind of thing is probably quite.
But if you're on a dig, it would be different. You're not. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, who knows what Sean's got there? He's probably got Tutankhamun's brother's tomb somewhere behind.
I should have brought Edgar on. It's a skull. Yeah. It's a skull that I have. You've seen Edgar, haven't you? I think. Yeah, you've seen Edgar.
I don't know what it is with all these guys. You got Michael with his Roger, and you with your Edgar.
Yeah. You got little bags of sand, and he does this.
But yeah, no, it's I guess the reaction, I think, for Mark and I both is like, you don't do that with things. It's like they call them pot hunters, and it destroys the evidence. Like the piece itself is not worth really anything at all, like monetary wise, but it is important in its context. And you take it out of its context, it's not really worth anything. And that's the one thing I struggle here in the UK, because people can go out with metal detectors and just sort of dig up everywhere and destroy the context in the archaeological record, and it's okay.
But then maybe I should have rephrased my question to: have you got anything that you bought legitimately of some kind of interest, archaeological interest?
I've never bought anything. Well, when I was in Jordan, it's a weird thing. You go into these places like this. I mentioned this Jawa, the Basalt City. It looks like it's deserted, but once you're in there, I don't know where these people come out from. They come out of the ground or wherever, and they all have coins to try to sell you all the time, or other artifacts. Same as in Egypt. Everybody had artifacts, whether they're real or not. A lot of them are fake, because they get really good at making coins. Like they would feed them to their chickens or their turkeys or their goat or something like that. And by the time it goes through their digestive system, it can make it look a bit old.
I just had this picture of Jason Harrigan looking at his coins going, oh no.
Yeah.
Harrigan's going, what's that?
Oh, dirty money, eh?
This looks old.
but I remember I got pretty good with when I was at university reconstructing pottery, and I was pretty good at it. Like, it was like a big jigsaw puzzle, but I got pretty good at it. And there was a guy that would come in, and he would legitimately buy antiquities off the market. Like, there'd be museums that would sell. They're selling stuff off, like even now. So he would buy this stuff, and he bought a Roman glass, it was almost like a beaker, a Roman glass beaker, but it came smashed in the post. And he took it somewhere to see if they could do it, and they said, "Oh, it's impossible to put together." So he came in and he gave it to me. I reconstructed the bloody thing. He told me I could keep it, but then My school took it.
Nice.
But I reconstructed it, and there was just a few slivers and stuff that I couldn't find the place, but I was quite proud of that. So that's the closest I really got to anything, I suppose.
Mm. So yeah, well, what about books, gentlemen? You've brought on maybe a couple of books to talk about and to show us from your archaeological libraries.
Yeah. Or did you want to hear about my Egypt debacle first?
If we're allowed to, if it's not censored.
Yeah, that one should be okay.
All right.
I Mark knows this one already, I think.
Yeah.
I visited Egypt, and I went to the pyramids, and then I went to Saqqara, which is the sort of the ancient capital, and oh no, I was near the ancient capital. Sorry, I'm getting this mixed up. And I decided to walk across the desert to Memphis, the ancient capital.
Not Tennessee.
And I stumbled onto
Not Tennessee.
No. And I stumbled on a military site, so I got arrested. And I had 2 cameras with me, so I spent a week in the Egyptian jail. That's the end of the story.
What? Well, okay, right, okay.
So we have two encounters with military, both in that section of the world. I'm beginning to be a little suspicious that you weren't an archaeologist. If you say shaken, not stirred, we'll understand.
Well, I'm already suspicious, Mark, that you go to the Soviet Union and it collapses. So
I did the same thing in Haiti.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
You haven't been in England recently, have you?
Yeah. Some things are done by themselves and don't need
Our
my
thought.
Well, and as well, I'm no longer living in Canada.
Here, that's where everybody runs to.
Yeah, Canada. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh,
Jason's there. Yeah.
Oh, Mr. Harrigan.
We'll get the questions in a minute, but I had to put that one up. Let's go into books, because people have asked me to do sort of 10 books of archaeology, and I thought it would be great, like you did, Mark, with Steve on the seafaring stuff. Right. I don't have most of the stuff I have, but I have 3 physical. Well, I can't find 2 of them other ones I have, but I have 3 physical ones, and then I'll use some JPEG. So if you want to flip back and forth or go, what's the best way?
That would be fine.
Yeah. So Mark, start.
You know that I am not going to be able to line this book up.
That's what we're waiting for.
Oh, almost did it.
Yeah.
So this is Timms and Hudson, Seton Lloyd, the Archaeology of Mesopotamia. So pretty much more in Sean's realm, geographical. Yeah, see, and but a wonderful book and a wonderful series. This was edited by Glenn Daniel, right?
Yeah. Originally, yeah.
Yeah. So I love that whole series. So that would be my first.
Okay. Well, we doubled up on that, and actually, I'll show you a JPEG. I won't keep them all separately. So we'll flip back and forth. This one here I do have, but I can't find it. Let me get rid of that. And there was a TV series as well of John Romer, and it's amazing. It's Deir al Medina, the work village for the tomb, the Valley of the Kings. And when I was in Egypt, I wanted to go there. So I after everything, I bought a ticket for the next, I think, day or 2 for a train to go down. I did not look at the date on the ticket. I assumed I was being sold correctly. But then when I went the next day, it was for a week away. So I was not pleased. It sort of reminded me, because the way going up, because Michael Palin was actually coming into the Middle East when I left there on his pole to pole journey. And it's sort of, he had the same experience at the Ramsey train station, where he'd wait in line and go up to they get to the counter and then they close, or he'd have to get in another line and a queue and go that. And he'd ask somebody where the where this train left, and he'd get all these weird answers and be told everywhere to go everywhere.
Crazy.
So this one's a little different. This is memoirs called The Accidental Archaeologist, the memoirs of Jesse D. Jennings, who's a famous American.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. I used to have that.
Yeah, and it's I like to read the memoirs, that sort of thing. So wonderful book.
And how, unless it's a long story, but why is he an accidental archaeologist?
Well, I think because of how he went to university, that wasn't the intention. And, which happens to us a lot, all of us, is that you end up shifting. When you see something new, you end up shifting gears,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool.
And I mentioned this is sort of getting me into archaeology, I think, the series as well, and this book. And it was great. About 6 or 7 years ago, he was at the Oxford Literary Festival with his India book, but I didn't have a copy of this. Otherwise, I would have got him to sign this, and I didn't have a copy at the time. So I don't know if I ever will get him to sign it, but it means a lot to me because it's so great, and the series is so good as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a book I have in my library. It's a fantastic book. So the next one is another this Glenn Daniels series, an older copy, and this is about Troy.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, and you can see on the back here they have a list. Anytime I see these, you can tell by the spine pretty quickly what they are. I'll grab them even though they're out of date.
My next one is another from that series. It's by the Seton Lloyd as well. It's sort of just a brief history of the history of archaeology and excavation in Mesopotamia and the Middle East.
Great book there.
Yeah, that's a really good one. And these are ones that I've replaced since I've come to England because those I know that I'll reread again.
Right. So now, if you wanted influence, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wondered, were some of these books like course reading when you study archaeology, or they're just books you picked up because of your interest?
Mostly for me, some of them were occasionally on an extra reading list, but never specifically for the course. Like they're not academic enough for that. And I don't think
they're readable.
Yes. And they're not excavation reports. I enjoy reading excavation reports, but I've got a few here that were given to me, Roman sites and stuff, but I wasn't going to show those because it's an acquired taste and they're very technical.
You're kinder than I am. I'm going to do a 1-2 punch just because I had to reorder everything while you were speaking just to be mean. That's my old textbook, David Hurst Thomas. Fascinating stuff. So, yeah, that's a textbook.
Mm-hmm.
And I still look through it, remind myself.
You've still got it, so.
Yeah, I can't remember. I had a couple textbooks, and I can't remember whose it was, but I know that one, but it wasn't that one. That wasn't our textbook, and I can't remember who did that one.
Brian Fagan, maybe?
Yes. Yeah, it was the Fagan one, yeah.
Yeah, I've got that in the other room. I had to pick between the two, but Fagan's a fantastic archaeology writer.
Yeah, he's really good. I don't have anything by him, but yeah, there's so much that I remember reading. Another one, we're going back to Egypt. This was a beautiful book I had. It's out of date, but it's well written, and it's a beautiful book. My friend in Canada, I think, still has this. It's Egypt by Breasted.
Oh, that's lovely.
James Breasted. And it's just a beautiful book. And that's why I was trying to get ones that I had the same edition as well to show.
And is it is it metal on the gold?
It is gold. It is gold. It's gold leaf, yeah.
Yeah, I think I've seen it where all that that pretty stuff is worn off, but
Yeah, most of them are, and mine was as nice as that. It was really nice because
I'd love to
I
see it.
used the dust jacket protectors, but I also used the heavier plastic acetate that I'd wrap around them so they wouldn't get any other damage done.
Yeah. So now we're going to go to a report. This is Alton Depe. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right, but this is actually published by Professor Masson, who I studied under in Russia. And just tell you, Sean's going to love this if I can line it up. He's going to want to put this thing right back together again, isn't he?
It looks like
I've drawn many of those, the profiles, and I used to have a little saw that I would I'd saw some of them to get a nice good profile.
looks like a pair of underpants though.
It's pottery.
Oh, okay. On the top, on the left side, it looked like a pair of Y fronts. I was like, what?
These are pictures from Egypt.
Oh, Egyptian Y fronts. Then I don't know.
but by the shape of them, you do this and you create a seriation chart, and you can date. You can date everything. You can date the site.
And so Mark's expression the whole time I'm holding this up was a lot different than yours, Sean.
There's a $2 word, $2 word for you. Seriation.
Yep.
Seriation.
Yep.
Yeah, you're up, Sean.
And here's another one like the. This is Olmsted, History of Assyria.
That's just beautiful.
And again, I really enjoyed this. I'd read each of these like many times. Yep. And these were ones that I can't. Well, this one I know for sure. My friend John has in Canada, and I'm pretty sure he has the Egypt one as well. So they've been saved.
Is that where we get the word seriation from, or
what?
You said seriation was the word. Yeah. Does it come from Syria or?
No.
Okay. Assyriation. I was like,
it's just putting stuff in order, more or less. Let's just leave it as that sort of an order through time, and then you can find out where your piece of pottery is, and it's mostly used for pottery. But with lithics, Mark, you can date everything very closely with the shape of the arrowhead, and I use quotation marks.
Yeah. I have to say, when I watch these archaeology shows sometimes, and they hold it up and say, "Look at this! It's a part of a flint axe or part of a flint arrowhead." I'm like, "It's a rock." How do they? They can tell obviously someone's created it or crafted it, but if I saw it lying there, I'd just be like, "Oh, it's a stone on the floor." It's
if you handle about 1,000 of them a week, you probably get pretty good at it.
Yeah.
So my next one is one that's very, very well known. Oh, live next to the Serpent Mound. Yeah, that's one of the famous ones. This is God, Graves, and Scholars, and C.W. Sarum. This was a very influential book early on in my life, and a lot of folks who went into archaeology. And it's a general popular history of archaeology up to that time. What, Sean? Probably the 50s or so.
Sorry, I was hold it up again. I was reading the comments. Which one's that? Oh, God's Graves and Scholars. Oh, yes, yeah. It's out of date, but it's not out of date because it's still history, and he writes so well.
Yeah. I think it was originally German, correct?
Yeah. Well, his real name is Merrick, and I just saw. There's a Karl Merrick that's done a massive history of the Hittites, and I kind of wonder if he's related to C.W. Sarum Merrick,
because Sarum has a book on Hittite.
Yeah, anyway, he's got the American. He did the same thing for America as well. The American
Hands on the Past.
Yeah.
They don't give a list in here, but they give a date, I'm sure. 1951.
Yeah. Jason wants Barry Cunliffe. I don't have anything. I didn't put anything on my list, but Barry Cunliffe is great.
Yeah, I have some in the other room. I should have known. I have its Prehistory of Europe, I think it is.
Yeah.
Isn't that Oxford? Yeah, I think so.
And yeah, read by Fred. You know, that Assyria book is really good. It's really good. I think everything that we're showing here pretty well, except the textbook or the is still in print. I think you can get most of it still in print, I think.
Not really
and then my next one, sorry?
Not really bedtime reading, though, the History of Assyria book. It looked rather heavy with all the gold on it. And
well, God's Graves and Scholars is. You want excitement. You got it's packed full of excitement. Especially,
I meant practical purposes. It would be really heavy to hold it, no?
Especially about this guy. Sir Austin Henry Laird, who dug at Nimrod. Well, this is Nineveh, and this is a fabulous 2-volume set. This is I had I don't think a first edition, but I had this edition, sort of like that. And you think anything that we went through was fun? He would have bandits, chasing him and shooting at, while he's trying to excavate.
They probably thought he was looting.
Yeah. Well, they wanted him to go because he's already dug it up, so they want him to go so they can just go in and grab it.
Yeah, I had that same set myself. It was a bit tattered, but it was nice to have.
I do have a 1-volume one that he condensed in 1 volume. I do have that here somewhere. I found it here and it's really rough shape, but I can't leave that behind. I have to buy that, and it's somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, I'm up. So here I have. Oh, excuse me. Even my watch yells at me. This here is Gordon Wiley and Jeremy Sabloff, History of American Archaeology.
Oh, yeah.
Sort of a standard. This would be really dated now, obviously, but anytime you get something, see if we get some more underpants here.
No, yeah. Well, not underpants. We got something else.
We're trying to liven the joint up a bit,
That's it.
Well,
so these are the ideas of the types of, here, if I can get it, types of ruins we would have here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, we've said underpants. We can't say in front of Mark the P word for female underpants. He doesn't like that word.
Oh. Pajamas?
That's the one, yeah.
This is a 2-volume set. I'm not sure if I had the 3rd edition or not, but it looked pretty well the same as this. It's ancient Near Eastern texts relating to the Old Testament, edited by James B. Pritchard. And these were the hardcovers. They're still, I think, in print and paperback, probably a reduced contents. But then there was also, am I going the right way? Yeah. The photographs, which was really great.
I keep thinking the first one says ancient and Near East Texas. I might have to get better glasses.
Well, there are texts that are potentially in the Southwest as well. Rock paintings and text, but that's a bit contentious for some.
So that set, what's interesting about that, Sean, is I not only use that in archaeology school, but I use that in seminary.
Yeah, you would. Yeah,
standard work.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do another history of archaeology, and this is by Glenn Daniel. I don't have a dust jacket for it. And this was a pretty standard work. I'm sure Sean's read this more than once. Working the camera there. So I really did always enjoy the history of archaeology, and of course that's where Serum came in first, right? Before I got to these other things,
Yeah, and Glenn Daniel is really interesting because he started the first they did live archaeology on the BBC in the 50s or early 60s. I forget what it was called, but it was live archaeology.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's on YouTube.
I don't know. There could be some left if they recorded it, but it was live. Yeah, they did a live show.
Isn't that interesting? I do remember he's the one I first read about doing the aviation and taking the photos from the.
Oh yeah.
And he was one of the people that I learned about that from.
Yeah.
You mentioned history of archaeology, though. I mean, how long is the history of archaeology? I mean,
But who you talk
19th century, 18th century, anything before that, or?
Yeah, because of you had. I mean, Thomas Jefferson was excavating, but also I think you had popes were excavating, right, in Rome. So Herculaneum and Pompeii and all that have a fascinating history.
There's texts in this that talks about King Nebuchadnezzar
right
digging up and finding stuff. So that's early archaeology, and that's very old.
Yeah,
but I guess maybe their motivation would have been different, no? Or
yeah, but then you get into different schools of archaeology. Thomas Jefferson it sort of made many steps forward in things as well, and then you get processual archaeology that is more 20th century, where you're bringing in other it's more scientific. You're bringing in other disciplines of science, physics, biology, and everything, because there's really neat stuff. Like you get a coprolite. Take it over, Mark. Tell us what a coprolite is.
So you go to a cave and you pick it up like this, and it's a coprolite.
It's fossilized poop.
It's
sort
poop.
of. But you can reconstitute it, and then you can get all the bugs and anything else that the person had ate, or the animal ate.
Is there any money inside it?
Yeah, dry caves and stuff is big for that. Yeah.
Any money inside it, or?
No. Well, I guess you could.
Well, potentially, if they ate some gold with it, there could be.
That's what I was thinking. If they ate the coins, and then
Yeah.
And mine is sort of similar to that, but it's the history. It's hard to see. It's a history of archaeological thought by Bruce Trigger, Canadian archaeologist. Brilliant. And he wrote. He actually did everything. He went to Egypt as well, but his big thing is this, because it's really the first book that takes in all archaeological thought, like the theory of archaeology, first history of it. And then he also wrote an amazing book on the history of the Huron as well.
Yeah, that book, I remember I got it when it came out, and how excited I was, because it really was different. It really rigorous. It was well written, but it was very rigorous. Very. I wish I still had a copy. I think it came out in paper like that, right?
Yeah, there's a new edition. Actually, I was looking this up, and I think there was a new edition after he died, or almost when he died in like 2006 or something. So there's an updated edition. So it could be really neat. The new edition.
Right.
But yeah, it's amazing. And the thing is, I've seen him lecture many times. So that was fun.
Yeah. Definitely a giant. Yep. Then this next one here does not have a dust jacket, but I show it because I think if you're somebody, I think for anybody it would get their. It's exciting. Let's put it this way, and it's very approachable. And this is edited by Fagan. Let me see if I can do this. Unfortunately, like I say, I do not have the dust jacket. It's a National Geographic thing. Let's see if we can do that.
Oh, yeah.
So these sort of pictures are the things that would, here we go. If I can do this.
Yeah. I remember that one, yeah.
Yeah, so this, let me get to the title page. You can see the influence of Indiana Jones on these sort of things, and it's funny, but it did have an. Let me see if I.
Oh yeah.
And if that's a way to get people excited and then interested in it, I like to say that, like most National Geographic publications, it's got gorgeous photography.
Yeah, and Jason mentions Francis Pryor. That's another really good one. He's a good writer. He's a good talker. And let's just say that he can put away the ale as well.
Oh, nice.
So, so I think you're finished. Well, I one other book I want to show is sort of a consolation prize for it. It's by the same author as one of them, and it's another fabulous series. It's called Testament.
Oh, that's a good
by
book.
John Romer. It's a fabulous one. All his stuff is good. There's a Byzantine one that he did, Valley of the Kings. They might be listening and they're coming for me. So okay, well, if I think are you finished with your books, Mark? Or?
Oh yeah. That copy
So,
of Testament you have is beautiful. It's in good shape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And well, we can open up for questions, I guess. Yeah, at this point, I was sort of saying like wait until we. There's been a few, but we sort of I think covered Mo. So yeah, start plying us with questions. Clean.
Well, I have a question first because I saw Summer made a comment where she was talking about Serpent Mound, and she said she always wanted to check out America's Stonehenge in Salem, New Hampshire. I mean, how much like Stonehenge is it? I mean, is it just a circular grouping of stones, and was it the same kind of thing? Do you know anything about it?
Don't know a thing about it.
I think that's the wooden one. Is that in? Yeah, it's like a wooden henge. So it's just going to be post holes. I think that's what she's referring to.
Oh, I don't.
But calling it a stone, yeah. So it might be something completely different. If she knows, then yeah, Oh, there she is. Look it up, or you read it, Mark. You got better eyes than I.
Well, I think this is referring to when you were talking about Nebuchadnezzar doing some excavations. Looked it up in ancient Mesopotamia. A foundation deposit of the Akkadian Empire ruler Nara-Sin was discovered and analyzed by King Nabonidus circa 550 BCE, who is known as the first archaeologist. Well, there you go. Thank you, Summer. Very nice.
I didn't have the name. Yeah, Nabonidus, and it's Akkadian.
Yeah.
What did I say? Akkadian. Akkadian.
Akkadian, yeah.
We don't know how they said it. So
I've not seen it spelled that way. That's true. I've not seen it spelled that way, I don't think.
It doesn't matter, but it's just, yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so we don't know. So you think it's ghosts of post holes?
Yeah, because I know there is something like that in I don't know if in New Hampshire, but in New England, I know there is something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure.
Good question. Do you think coastal erosion will destroy, but surely uncover some amazing new archaeology? That's from Jason.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's already doing it. You know, it depends on where you are in the world. And it's always been like that, though. There's,
Yeah, I've always been interested about the, is it Doggerland? Is it the stretch of land between England and France that was?
Yeah, that would be fascinating, huh?
Or the chat, it would be amazing to find out what was there. I guess Salem, New Hampshire again. Some are saying stone chambers.
Yeah, I know nothing about that. Then
we have stuff like that in the woods here. You'll go and you'll be walking. They almost looks like Tholos tombs from Mycenae, but on a small scale. A lot of times these things were used during colonial or post-colonial times for manufacturing, everything from lime to, and they do look dramatic when you come up on them in the woods, but a lot of times they have a pretty simple explanation. I don't know about these, but I have them around my house. If I go out in the woods, I find old stone structures, and of course here everything's stone walls anyway. If you're in the woods, you see stone walls everywhere.
Yeah, come on, people, questions.
A lot of things we get every time somebody finds something they don't know what it is here, they say it's a Viking.
Okay.
Some who knows, but
you could get away with that in England here, especially along the coast.
Well, you can in Canada too, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Labrador. There's lots of places there. Yeah.
We have souterrains in Ireland too, according to Jason.
Yeah, I can imagine walking around the landscape in Ireland would be amazing. Yeah, I need to get Jason over here to help me straighten up some stone walls. I imagine he's done that in his lifetime.
Well, didn't he show the one time he had one of his stone wall all ripped out and then all of a sudden put back? I think he did it last summer, the summer before. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm not
I
surprised.
think I remember something like that.
Yeah. I could sit there and just point what needs to go where. That'd be all right.
Well, you'll need a good chair and some cocktails, maybe the gin and tonic if it's a hot day.
Yeah.
Gin and tonic. Okay. Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'd love to see him come over. It would be fun.
How many great stories do you each have but cannot tell due to information you cannot make public over YouTube?
None.
From Isaiah Armstrong.
Yeah, no, I have nothing. I've told everything that I know about.
Yeah.
I just Googled these stone structures. They look, I don't know if you can see it, looks something like that.
In New Hampshire?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So
yeah, that looks like something right out of the Neolithic here in England,
Interesting.
But I think sometime with that sort of stuff, you realize there's only so many ways you can put them together to make a root color, right? So you're putting your vegetables somewhere. I mean, I don't know what the story behind these are, but like I said, that would be something that would be not unusual here.
I would find it very amusing half the time if, like, the ancients look at what we think their buildings were compared to what they may really well have been, right? So
there's a famous book about that.
Oh yeah.
What was his name? David Macaulay. About the tomb. So they have a toilet paper roll, which is, of course, the archaeologists are saying is a scroll, and the toilet is the throne, and it's something of the hotel is the name of it.
It's Hotel California, something like that.
It's got some weird name, but he was quite an illustrator. Still is, I think. I'm not sure.
Well, you can go right back to Edgar Allan Poe's story, Some Words with a Mummy, who mummy wakes up and everybody's talking about, the pantheon of Egyptian gods, and he starts talking. What are you talking about? There's only one God. What are you talking about? Everything they know is wrong.
Yeah.
You see, that's something I've wondered. I mean, are they called mummies because the process of mummification already existed as a word, so they went mummification mummies, or is that? Do you know?
If I ever knew, I forgot.
All right, Summer, have a look and send it back to us. Jason says, was there any ideological control of archaeology by regimes, etc.?
Yes, absolutely.
Germany, 1940s.
Israel, some people would say now. I mean, I know that's not popular, but if you had a Crusader castle and under it you had something from that they felt was more important. I mean, I think politics in every country has always affected archaeology. Well, even what Sean's saying about how the laws are written to protect a site. I mean, that's a control or a lack of control. I don't know what you'd want to call it.
I mean, didn't Saddam do something with Nineveh? Didn't he, when the reconstruction, he had it reconstructed, and then on the bricks he stamped Nebuchadnezzar and Saddam Hussein or something like this, I think.
Yeah.
So, read by Fred. Do you think Göbekli Tepe will radically change our assumption that agricultural civilization began in Mesopotamia?
Like you hear stuff like that, and I think it started in many places.
Yeah.
And there's really no one place, I don't think, that something started and then spread. There's instantaneous things that are happening within a certain period of time. And that's always happens. So you just, even inventions now, somebody across the world is working on some and somebody else beats them to it. It's like theory of evolution. Right. There were so many people working at it, and Charles Darwin beat everybody to the post,
He almost didn't. He just did it because he found out there was some competition.
Yeah, there was. Yeah. But that's the thing. These people then wouldn't know. They didn't know.
We do that here. Of course, we follow what we call corn through the dry caves of Mexico and stuff like that. And it's thousands and thousands of years ago, and you can see the morphological changes to it. It doesn't start out looking exactly like it does now, so the agriculture, even the whole theory that came out of the Middle East with the hydraulic civilizations. The Mayans had dams and waterways, and some of the theories are that's the environmental impact they had is what led to their decline. But these things happen. Even the pyramid structures, right? Some of the Mayan ones are as old, or even in Teotihuacan and stuff like that, are ancient. But
well, the thing is, like, people don't think they had stuff in various places. Like, everybody's view of Africa is that it was a primitive place, but they had, while Europe was living in caves, while people were living in caves, basically they had cities. They had multi-storied cities, like and the Anasazi did, and they had sanitary toilets. They had all this, and in Africa they had a huge trade route as well that was all the way from China through India all the way across up to Africa into Europe and into the Middle East.
And let's not forget Egypt is in Africa, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm sure I read somewhere. Aren't there more pyramids in Sudan than in Egypt?
Yeah. Different scale though, right?
I think. I don't know.
There's still some left. I forget the Italian. It wasn't Belzoni, but it was another Italian like Belzoni used to blow them up, looking for stuff.
Nice.
Wonderful. Yeah. That's just craziness, right? And the other thing I'm interested in, of course, is the things that we're really breaking through on right now is the underwater archaeology. That's really, it took Jacques Cousteau and his buddy making the aqualung, obviously, to make any progress. But now with submersibles that aren't even manned, they're able to do things that's unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, you remember? I can't remember what was it. The like at Antarctica, they found the ship.
That was just recently, right?
Yeah. And the preservation is just amazing.
Endurance.
And isn't it the Black Sea where they have the water preserves everything in the Black Sea at a certain, so they're finding things there, becoming a great site for that. So I mean, you wouldn't want to go down there in person, but these remote vehicles change the game, I think.
Yeah. Okay, so Isaiah Armstrong, how many countries have you each been to in total?
Legally?
No, I think legally and illegally.
I would say I'd have to at least spend the 15, 20. I'd have to sit down and make a list.
Yeah, I haven't been to that many. Less than 10, I would say. For me, less than 10.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, I've been to 38.
USSR because it was one place when I got. Well, I guess it wasn't, right? Because
Where?
it would have been Moldova, SSR, and it would have still been separately counted.
Mm.
And if you go back again, it's a different country.
Done that before. At my age, there's a lot of different countries.
Yeah.
Jason, as a kid, I used a bucket with the bottom cut out for searching streams, having seen it in Boy's Own magazine. Great fun, but never found much.
You could probably find stuff in the streams in Ireland, I would think, right?
No, it's at the end of rainbows. You find the stuff there in Ireland.
Yeah, well, it just like I remember watching an archaeology program before, and they identified where a Roman bridge was, but now it's like, nothing there. Like everything's been taken away. It's been robbed out, all the stone, but they blocked off the little, and it was just a very small creek river. They blocked it off, and they were finding, because people would throw offerings off the bridges and stuff. They would find everything, rings, jewelry, everything in the creek bottom,
Isn't there that thing in London where they walk the banks of the Thames? And,
Mudlarking.
Mudlarking, yeah.
Yeah, we see that over here and we go, what? Yeah, sort of looks
It's
like
funny
fun.
because one of the women who has a big channel on YouTube doing it, she's actually currently in America doing it. So it made me laugh when you said that. She's visiting people and showing you guys how to do it, I guess.
She needs to avoid the big pipes.
Yeah. Well, you could do the same thing up, I think, in where is it? I think the Merseyside. I think they've dumped a whole bunch of stuff there. Like it's out of context, but there's a lot of historical stuff that's there apparently. And in Canada, in Toronto, there's a spit that's been built, like it's called the Leslie Spit, and the Royal Ontario Museum had a lot of like axes and stuff from Europe. Like these were things that were collected during the 19th century, no context or anything. And they apparently had like tons of this stuff, like dump truck loads full that were buried on this Leslie Spit to create a little more land into Lake Ontario.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Who says video games don't help kids? They could get a career driving remote control drones for underwater archaeology. Well, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yep. Computers have changed archaeology immensely. Yeah.
I think even you can do some kind of archaeology from like satellite images, can't you?
Yep, absolutely. There's space archaeology now. So not only can you do it from space, but there's stuff up there that you could do archaeology too.
Oh, wow.
Wherever we go, we leave junk, and that's what archaeology goes after.
Jason, I have a few stone axes from field walking and streams.
Yeah, that would be neat. Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of these, you see, that's the thing. Like what we were talking about, that it's out of context, but a lot of this stuff is already out of context. Yeah. And a spot find, like you say, you're walking a field, and somebody 8,000 years ago was walking along, they had a hole in their pocket. They lost a knife or something like that. Yeah. Or they flew shot an arrow at something, and they lost the arrow.
Mm-hmm.
Must have been really, really good trousers to hold a stone at.
Well, we've seen what their underpants look like. So.
They lost more than their axe when they put it in their pocket. They lost everything.
I remember doing a bit of field archaeology, salvage stuff in Canada, and I think it was the extension or the widening of a highway.
Yeah.
So we had to do this corridor, and we were at one place at somebody's farm, and the guy was sort of talking to us, and he was saying, well, why would they build here? It's just it's right by the the highway and stuff like this. Why would they live here and stuff like this? And then so the answer, the person that was in charge just took this and going, yeah, but just think, it's a good route for trade. It's perfect area. And they go, oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah, some conversations you're not going to make much progress with.
No.
Read by Fred. Did either of you study linguistics for archaeology, reading hieroglyphics or cuneiform? If so, how hard was it?
Yes. Well, see, in the United States, all our archaeology is almost always in the anthropology department. And it's usually a prereq is a course in linguistics, which is helpful. The hieroglyph stuff, I think like places like University of Wisconsin, there's schools where you would have specialized coursework in it. I did some out of a book, but I wasn't required to.
For me, doing Near Eastern archaeology to begin with was biblical Hebrew. And was it hard? Yes, it was.
Yeah.
So that's why you're not allowed back in Israel.
He butchered the language.
That's it. Get out.
Well, if I spoke it, they wouldn't have understood it anyway because it's not modern Hebrew. But the strange thing is, I can't read anything anymore in biblical Hebrew, but I will probably die remembering the alphabet.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I had to do biblical Hebrew and obviously ancient Greek for, when New Testament studies or Old Testament studies. But that was actually post archaeology for me.
I looked a little bit at hieroglyphs because I had, what's his name? Gardner's hieroglyphs, grammar. And I looked at that a little bit and worked through it, but there's so many. There's like hieratic, there's later stuff.
Yeah.
There's different types of hieroglyphs. But I also looked a little bit into and started a little bit with in cuneiform because that's what I really wanted to do. But then there's different styles. There's the Babylonian, there's the Akkadian, Sumerian. The cuneiform is just a style of writing. Then there's Ugaritic as well. All sorts of stuff.
So
Did
how
you
do
ever
they?
do that? Go ahead.
No. Go on, Mark.
I was going to see if Sean had started off early with some of those Wallace Budge books. A whole page would be covered with it. It just, your eyes would blow up,
Yeah. Oh, I love Wallace Budge. I really like his translation of the Book of the Dead, even though it's not very good, but it's I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you read hieroglyphs then? Because you know what you learn what the symbol means, but how do they know how it sounded? I mean, you can't read it
You don't.
aloud. No.
They don't.
So you just read it in English then, basically. So it's like,
well, you translate. Well, like the symbol means X. It may mean grain, or it may mean a king's name. But then you add another symbol to it. It may mean change something else, like grain was sold or something like that.
But then saying that, how do they know the king's name was the king's name if we didn't know what it sounded like?
That's the Rosetta Stone. And thanks
from
to
the Greek.
Yeah, well, there's 3 different languages, and it was Champollion was the one that cracked it. Yeah. Again, we're talking about people doing the same thing, and he just beat everybody to the punch, and translating.
And plus, people still live in Egypt. I mean, and they're Coptic speakers. You can make sometimes you make pretty educated guesses. I mean, it's very specialized, but it's not all gone. It's a long, deep history and a lot of things. Just like if I went back to, I'm reading Shakespeare right now with a class. I mean, your head wants to explode, but then you realize you do get a large portion of it before you run into something. The big translations going on now are the Mayan ones, and that was a horrible struggle. And and the story of that is fascinating, and the difficulty. And is it linear B or whatever that is?
It's linear A or linear B. They still don't know.
They still don't know for the Greek.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, even though we have Proto-Greek speakers, but yeah.
And the Mayans used pictographs too, like hieroglyphics.
Yeah.
And you get a break. It takes generations, and then all of a sudden accelerates. And this is a classic case. I don't know who said about video games. But it's a classic case where computers change the game, right? Because you can compare, different people doing work different places, and you have a common database. It's all making connections, right? And if you can make the connection, it starts building like Legos, a little faster and a little faster. So.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned hieroglyphs. Like, not all hieroglyphs are pictographic. There is the later one that's the hieratic. That it's like it's a very cursive type thing, and there are tons of this stuff. There's 3 amazing volumes by Miriam Lichtman that has like the Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, and the New Kingdom material of hieroglyphs, and there's stories, there's poetry, there's pornography. The stuff that they found in Deir el-Medina. Yeah, I'm getting to it. Deir el-Medina, which I mentioned that it was a French excavator that did it. I can't remember his name, but John Romer did the show. What was it called again? Oh, this just slipped my mind. But anyway, the first book that I Ancient Lives. and he went through this, and there's like wells full of this stuff, ostraca, and it's the limestone that's been cut off, and they would use that to write on. And there's letters and everything. There's things like, oh, Bob can't go to work today because he was in a bar fight last night. Like I'm obviously updating it, but it's the exact same thing. And he's a little worse for wear this week, or there's actual full stories, like fiction that's written, and poetry, and pornography. They like drawing naughty pictures on the ostraca as well.
Well, we have the blocked rooms in a lot of these museums in Greece. The stuff locked in those, raise an eyebrow.
Well, yeah, like Herculaneum, Pompeii, the walls, because like there was the famous one are the two brothers or something like that showed off their wares in the paintings.
Well, because they didn't have any underpants, they left them to be found in the.
Yeah.
But they use scales to help illustrate.
They use scales.
Mark's going fine with this
weighing scales. Or...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember the first time I went to Pompeii. What an incredible trip that was. Just to walk around a city and realize how much doesn't change. Yeah, I mean, you can tell it's an ancient place, but you recognize what you're walking around, and it was amazing to me. And the fact that our generation didn't invent pornography offends me.
I don't know. They haven't found any pornographic cave paintings yet, though, have they?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You can see the archaeologist is in there turning his head.
Well, there's one thing again. Like I'm going back to Africa, which is really fascinating. Is rock paintings in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, and Southern Africa. They're amazing, and there are naughty pictures in those as well. They're just amazing because Africa has been explored, but I forget who it was. There was a big philosopher that said, talking about the history of the world, it's like, well, there's Africa, but there's nothing much happened there, so we can just skip it. And that's the way it's been. But as I say, there are huge cities there. There are massive cities that are still there. Well, the Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe is just amazing,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, Jason, again, the Antiquities Trade funds war, terror, and drugs. Is this a good argument against private collectors?
Some people say against museums.
Yeah.
I mean, it matters how far you want to take it. I mean, we just had a billionaire in the United States that finally made a deal in New York to give up his antiquities. Well, they're taken illegally. They're pulled out of context. We see a lot of this in Italy, right? And the folks, it's if you're going to feed your family, and then there's money to be made. I mean, you open up an Egyptian tomb, and some tomb robber got there before you 2,000 years ago. I mean, it's nothing new.
I mean, I just wonder sometimes when people talk about, how these antiquities end up in different countries and they should be returned. I mean, is there an argument that some of the countries from which they come, they're just not developed enough to look after that, or the technology they haven't got it? Well, maybe like Iraq, for example. Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking in my mind, I'm thinking of the Elgin marbles, of course, but Greece, of course, is, they can deal with that, and we should probably return them. But others, I wonder, they haven't got the infrastructure. That's what I mean to say, maybe to look after these things. Or should we, because it's, universal and it belongs to the world, should we not maybe fund it in those countries for them? I don't know.
We don't want to lose what's in our museums. I mean, you don't want to empty out your museums. And a lot of these things, I mean, it's problematic, right? I guess you'd have to go on a case-by-case basis and make sure that this stuff isn't going on anymore. I mean, there needs to be oversight. And, if you're the head of the Metropolitan Museum of Art and you get caught doing something like that, they not only should can you, they probably should put you in jail. But what happened in the 1900s is itself history. So, I mean, I'm not sure we can do much about that.
No.
Yeah. But if anybody's doing it now, I mean, we have international law of some sort. They should have to face the consequences.
About 18, 20 years ago here in the UK, there was the Palmerston Report that was started to repatriate human remains. It's been problematic because there are countries like, Egypt could take care of stuff. A lot of countries could, but there were a lot of small countries in Southeast Asia that they gave it back to, and they're gone now. Yeah. These bodies are completely gone. Yeah, because they couldn't take care of them.
Yeah. And actually, Mark, I've got a question for you. Going this time into your Coast Guard career, did you ever? Because I guess you protect the coast from smugglers and people bringing in drugs and contraband and all this stuff. Did you ever come across any antiquities that were being smuggled in by ship and things like this? Or
I did not. I've run into weapons and drugs, obviously, and human trafficking on a massive scale, but I've never ever run into antiquities.
Yeah, I think it's less, but they seem to get through a lot easier in some places. But I think they're getting better at border controls, especially in Europe, because right now I think because when Iraq was going down there and the museums, a lot of it was destroyed, but a lot of it was looted before and showed up in the West.
That's happening in Ukraine right now as we speak.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Syria, it was happening in Syria there as well.
Yep. Yeah. And, I guess when we take a heritage like that, I think about Ukraine and, number one, just indiscriminately bombing a historic site. We don't want anybody being bombed under any conditions, but so you have destruction that way, and that's always going on. But that there's people on the ground taking advantage, either organized crime or, troops or whatever, and there's money to be made. And if the museums were to buy, I think it would be hard with Ukraine now for museums to be acquiring things illicitly. But private collectors, yes.
Yeah. Well, just here, Northampton Museum was closing up, I think, or something, and they were going to sell off all the stuff they had. I don't know how big. I don't know the whole story, but I know that Alan Moore, the author and comic creator, who lives in Northampton, he put a letter and he might have actually got things stopped. I'm not sure, but I remember that being an issue a few years ago. Wow. So it's even happening now in developed countries that museums are getting rid of stuff. Archives are dumping stuff and just just shredding stuff because they can't. There's no money for it.
That happened in Detroit. Remember the big museums in Detroit when the city itself went through some real bad financial times, and it was amazing because of course you had people like the Fords and stuff donating these things. And they had deep pockets.
Yeah.
And you hope that it goes to another museum somewhere. A lot of it goes to private collectors. And
well, like here, there's a good art gallery where I live here. They've got a lot of art, and it's a museum of other things. But it was sort of there's sort of a private public school, like a boys type school that was quite big at the time. Not the Bedford School, but there's another one. I can't remember the name of it now. But a lot of those people were rich and they collected antiquities. And they've got, like, they used to have a nice little case, like with Egyptian shawabtis and all sorts of canalpic jars and everything. These people traveled in the 1900s and collected this stuff because you could buy it. Like you could see there on the internet. There's a great photo of a salesman in Egypt on the street selling mummies.
Yeah, we had a lot of those types of antiquities from exactly what you're talking about at the seminary I went to, because the professors in the 1800s, besides collecting amazing books, but you have a class, you're teaching about the Old Testament. They had a view of things, and they'd have a whole class. Now, there's no context for any of this stuff.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Mm-hmm. Right, Isaiah Armstrong again. What are some of your favorite museums that you've visited?
Great question.
It
For
is.
me, it would be the Viking Museum, the Longships up in Oslo, and
I've been there as well. It's great.
And right next to it, where they have the Fram,
Mm-hmm.
Nansen's ship, and then they had Kon-Tiki there too.
Kon-Tiki as well, yeah.
That would be one of my favorites. And then Mystic Seaport Museum, obviously, since that's an interest of mine, in Mystic, Connecticut.
Sean?
Yeah, a few. Well, the Egyptian Museum in Cairo is amazing. That's like it. You could spend months there and not even see everything because a lot of the stuff is in storage as well. In Jordan, there was lots of little places, and then there was a few museums there, and I was lucky enough to get behind closed doors on a few of them. And what else? I think the Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto is actually a damn good museum. It doesn't get the respect it deserves, but it's very good. And there are other small little ones in Egypt, like little Coptic museums that are just up somewhere, or like I remember seeing some really neat artifacts. It was at the Egyptian Exploration Fund offices. I think they had a little thing off to the side, and also Chicago, the University of Chicago has some amazing stuff. And
that would be your area, right? Because they did a lot of where you dug was a lot of that stuff, Chicago, right?
Well, when I was in New York City one time, I went to Pierpont Morgan's library, and at that time they had on loan there all the stuff from the Chicago, and it's all the stuff that you see in the thing, like the harp from Nineveh and all this, like all these things that are in every book. Right. And it was all there, and it was just amazing, like the goat, everything. It's just amazing stuff, and it was. I remember that, and I don't think I would ever have seen it anywhere else, and it was just in a small little room.
So in Canada, they had this thing called Museum of Man Publications.
Yes, yeah.
What is that?
Well, there's I'm not sure if it's the same. I'm not sure if that's the same. The government put out archaeological reports that were red paper covered, and they were free or like $1 a piece. And there were publications all over, but the museum, man, like I think that has to do with the museum in Ottawa, and they were putting out publications there. But I'm not sure if the red archaeological publications were connected to that. I can't remember. I don't think they were. I think this was specifically a government thing. But these things, and they're worth a lot of money now because they're long out of print.
That hurts.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Jason, again, is there an object existing that may possibly be the Ark of the Covenant or other items from the temple as recorded?
No.
Yes, somewhere in Sean's room.
Don't open the box, Sean. I don't want to see you melt on television.
I think there is actually apparently in Ethiopia. I forget the name of the place. There is it says object existing may possibly be. So that's where I'm taking that. I forget the name of the place, but there's a temple, and apparently inside of that is the old Hebrew Ark of the Covenant.
Well, those are neat churches there because they're dug into living rock into the ground. They're the top of the church is flat on the ground, and you go down into the church.
I think it's fascinating.
A fascinating place. I mean, because you've got the old Christianity and you've got Jews, black Jews, which is really interesting, I think. Anyway, I don't know.
Well, and the thing is, too, at that time, there was, I wanted to pursue this. I only came across it in a small thing. maybe somebody else watching knows about this, but apparently it's something to do with Muhammad's son, I think, was fleeing, and he hid out in Ethiopia there, and there were really good relations between the Jews and the Muslims for a time. I don't know what happened, but for a time, they were really working together in a sense. You know, they respected each other.
You see, that's always something I keep meaning to look up, is what religion would Muhammad have been before he made, or, you know, before he, you know what I'm trying to say here?
Mm.
It's like, I mean, did they have, do you know? I mean, did they have a monotheistic tradition? I mean, were they coming from
but they had a
Islam, or?
Yeah,
Sorry?
they were at a crossroads, really. So they knew about a lot that was going on in the world, a lot about different religions, and not just from West Asia, but they would have known stuff from India. They would have known all sorts of things. And so I don't think there's a simple answer. They were influenced by monotheism. They were influenced by Christianity and
Zoroastrianism as well.
Zoroastrianism, yeah, of course.
Yeah, so they had a very cosmopolitan intellectual tradition that maybe we don't think about. And I think that they picked what they thought worked, what made sense.
I mean, isn't the stone, is it the Kabbal? No, what's it called? The
Kabbal or whatever.
Yeah, the stone. I mean, that's ancient, isn't it? I mean, that predates, Islam. So yeah, it's interesting. I need to read. I did read Karen Armstrong's biography of Muhammad, but I don't remember her saying specifically. Anyway, read by Fred. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, this was directly related, so I thought I'd pop that up.
Oh, right. Oh, super. Thanks, Jason. Okay, great. Read by Fred. Do you believe that the Phoenicians circumnavigated Africa? I think Pharaoh Necho, is it? Necho was said to have sponsored it.
Yeah, they would have had the ability to do it, because like everybody seems to like, not everybody, but the common misperception, I think, of the past is that they weren't as smart as people are today.
It says something, doesn't it? You know?
Yes, it does. Well, we have some of their funerary type boats, and I think it would be a mistake to think that's what they used. Wasn't that the story about Punt?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's number one. We're finding out. I mean, Ireland's famous for it because you had the Brendan voyage recreation where you can actually take a leather boat. Who would have thought that, all the way across the North Atlantic? And they did it just fine. They're finding that a lot of the settlement in North America wasn't just land bridge. That they were quite capable of making boats. And now how sophisticated they are, we don't know, because we haven't found any yet. That's the earlier question. With climate change, are we going to find things that are going to surprise us? I think, yes, we are. But I think that they, to think that we invented everything at, in the age of, I guess, discovery or exploration. I mean, I think people have always been doing stuff. How did they get to Australia?
The Vikings, went to North America and they went to the Middle East. They went around Europe, and they probably went down the coast of Africa. I bet as well. It may not be. I was just going to see here. I was just going to say, Jason is saying here Chinese junks, because they figure that the Chinese junks have shown up on the western coast of the States.
Yeah.
Well, you follow the currents and the Pacific currents, and you start. I mean, obviously, we all know about Polynesian and Kon-Tiki. We've already mentioned, but I mean, I think that these travel, even if they were unintentional, you might have one or two survivors if something happened. But I mean, it's awful interesting to me how long Australia's been settled. We're not talking about huge land bridges there, are we?
No, but they're close enough, for people to have traveled around, and not just convicts.
And a very, very, very long time ago. I mean, Australia's been settled for a long time.
Yeah, no, it's just it's fascinating because I think the Phoenicians, because that's the thing, Africa was a going concern, I guess you could say that, before the Europeans came.
Yep.
You know, it was that destroyed everything, because the Portuguese wanted the trade routes, because once they sailed around and saw and realized that Africans were trading with India and China, they wanted to take over. You know. So, and they did, even though their ships were like dinky toys compared to the Chinese ships at that
Right.
time.
I just get this impression that nobody in Europe ever had any spices.
Yeah.
What they say, nutmeg probably drove the world economy for generations. It seems so strange to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, I read a book, Nathaniel's Nutmeg, and it was really interesting.
Was it good?
Yeah, really good. Yeah, yeah, it's well worth reading.
All right.
In the spirit of adventure and adventures in August. Ah, there we go. What are your favorite adventure stories, either fiction or non-fiction? Well, I'm glad I don't have to answer this, do I? So,
Well, for nonfiction stuff, I love the David Livingstone and African explorers. Also, Sir Richard Francis Burton, going into Africa and to Mecca and places like that. And there's lots that traveled around, like Marco Polo, but even coming up even more recently, Mary Kingsley, traveling in East Africa. T. Lawrence, a little bit of that, and what's her name?
Gertrude
Bell.
Bell.
Yeah. And then even up into a bit later, what's it, Freya Stark, doing stuff like that. It's endless. And then you've got, well, Mark will talk about the sort of Mesoamerican stuff there, but also you got the Arctic and Antarctic explorers.
Yeah, you could build a whole library just with polar exploration, right? And have something really worthwhile. To me, like you mentioned, Mesoamerica, John Lloyd Stevens, and then the British artist Catherwood, who was with him. I mean, many of us have seen those images, and that was pure adventure. Archaeology was really in its infancy. But to me, I read a lot of maritime stuff. So I think when I was younger, it would have been Peter Fruscian, who was up in Sean's neck of the woods for much of his life. And he did a book on the Seven Seas. He did a book on Eskimos, as he called them. He did all that Arctic stuff. But even we talk about the Fram with Nansen and some of the polar stuff there and the sea stuff. But for fiction, Kidnap, probably one of my favorites, by Robert Louis Stevenson. I like a lot of the British thriller writers from the 60s and 70s, Hammond Innes, Alistair MacLean, Desmond Bagley. He was British, wasn't he? I think he was. Yeah. So or nonfiction again, Farley Mowat. I could read his stuff all day long, and an amazing writer. But he also wrote nonfiction and fiction, right? But I've read his nonfiction for the most part, and great sense of humor, but also a great sense of timing when he writes. So the list would be endless,
Yeah. Fiction for me, it's a lot of this stuff. I like the swashbuckler stuff. I like the Alexander Dumas stuff. I still do. I think from a kid. And like we're gonna read. I'm gonna reread Robinson Crusoe, or at least I hope so. And I hope I'll get to it, because I don't think I've ever read the second book, the sequel to it. So that'll be really interesting. So there's so much. And the thing is, just the Gods of Graves and Scholars book by Saram is pure adventure, just from beginning to end. It's pure adventure. Yeah,
for travel, I think the one I would add to the list, it was a brilliant writer and just lived the stuff, was Eric Newby. Last Grain Race is one of the best maritime books I've ever read. And I've got one now. After he was a prisoner of war in
Oh,
World War
love and war in the Apennines, maybe.
II. I just picked up a copy. Have you read that?
Yeah, I've got most of his books here. Actually, I really like it.
Yeah,
And his biography is good as well.
I didn't know there was one.
Yeah, and he does one where he travels in the Soviet Union. I don't know how easy it is to get hold of it. I think he does the Trans-Siberian, but during the Soviet times. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Oh, and Tim Severin, who Jason mentions, never wrote a bad book.
Yeah.
And I just got a copy of
it down now.
Yeah.
Tim Severin, right.
And the next question was, who's the best guests with sea peoples? And then John Oliveria puts in 1177 BC, the year civilization collapsed, posed the same sea people question. But yeah, it's I just don't think they were a specific people separate. I think they were just almost like merchants in a way, or smugglers, pirate, you name it. And they were from all nations, I think.
Opportunistic.
Yeah.
That neck of the woods has always had movement, right? That there's constant movement of populations, but I've never seen anything convince me it was one group.
Yeah, so that it's fun, but yeah, the adventure stuff is just travels. I love African exploration. I really, really love it. It's one of my favorites.
This is what happens with these things, right? Everybody's got TBRs going.
Well, yeah, I've already written down as it Ghosts of Graves and Scholars and Tim Severin, because I don't know him. But I only read my first Hamaninis. I think I told you the other day. A few weeks ago. Great, fantastic.
Also a good travel writer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He was as is, I think, every third person in Great Britain, and a fantastic sailor. And as was Brian Fagan, the archaeologist. He's actually written books on sailing. So so I think in his book is called Passport to Adventure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. I haven't read him in probably, I don't know how long, a long time ago. I used to read him when I was younger.
Yeah.
But yeah, any more questions, I guess? Because we're coming up on the 2-hour mark here.
We've got 2 marks on the 2-hour mark. So
when you got it, you got it.
I'm not quite sure I got it.
What does that mean? This conversation goes sideways really fast.
Here we go. Right. So, fun question. What inspired the myth of Atlantis? And could there be a kernel of truth there? That's from Isaiah Armstrong.
Well, that's Plato's fault.
Yeah, Plato did it, right?
Yeah. Well, it's the
Thera.
No, yeah, Thera and
Santorini.
And the volcano eruption.
Yeah.
That destroyed it all.
Yeah, I think it. I mean, he was trying to create, for the most part, a fictional place to make a point, and for a while there, he was the only book on the bookshelf, so he had a huge influence. Well, he's always frozen like the statues.
There's still people that still believe it and search for Atlantis. Like it's they think it's somewhere west of the Gibraltar area, around there still. Like it's just really weird. Okay, here we got. Okay, how many more hours do we have?
Yeah, Sean, good books on Zulu history.
I would say anything by John LeBand, Ian Knight is great, and then there's Washing of the Spears is a good one, but it's a bit out of date. But newest stuff by John LeBand and Ian Knight would be a great, if you're wanting to start, would be a perfect place to start.
I'd recommend. It's old, but it's good. E.A. Ritter's biography of Shaka Zulu as well. If you wanted something a bit before the whole Rorke's Drift, Isandlwana time, I think that's worth checking out.
Sometime once I get all the Zulu stuff together, all my books sorted, I'll do something on the books that I have and sort of recommendations, I suppose. But yeah, that we're talking a little while now.
Thinking about the adventure books, I just popped into my mind. My Early Life by Winston Churchill in Africa was an interesting book.
Yeah, he was in the Boer War, right? And
he was captured.
Yeah. Well, he's an interesting guy, isn't he? Really.
Oh, you could spend the rest of your life just tracking down the stuff, right?
Well, thanks for stopping by, Jason.
Yeah. Cheers, Jason.
Oh, I thought he said trench coat.
Yeah.
What does he have for a second job? I'm awful brave because he's all the way over across the pond. If he was sitting in the room, I'd keep my mouth shut.
Yeah, people don't realize, what is he, 6'4", 6'6"?
Yeah, he's a big guy. Yeah.
Well, he
buys really little furniture. You know what I mean?
For me, it's English.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, me too.
I remember getting the French reports, archaeological reports for Darrell Medina. I could, with a dictionary, prize out correct information from that kind of stuff. And I think you could probably do that with almost any language, but to read it, no. You'd get some facts.
Yeah, I'm English only.
I'm not reading it.
There's some things that you just can't wash out of your brain after you read it. Oh, ouch. He always manages to get the last word in. You notice that? It just goes.
Well, that is the last comment, so that's why I popped it up before Summers.
Oh my gosh, I'm not going to recover from that.
Luckily, Jason is though recovering.
What if he's telling the truth? How would we know?
No, this was fun, and well, since we're doing, we might as well talk. I guess give a few minutes, maybe talking about the August of Adventures, and because we're going to do Treasure Island, Lost World, I think is the next one, and then Tarzan, the first Tarzan book, and King Solomon's Mines, and possibly if we could slip in Robinson Crusoe. So, Mark, which one have you read? Don't talk at the same time.
Middle Mark, or
you might as well start first.
Okay, fine. I've read actually all of them, with the exception of Tarzan, and actually I haven't read Robinson Crusoe, but the other three I have, yeah. But I can reread them again and again. There's just something about those kind of books, just love them. What about you, Mark? I've got to look that way, even though it's.
Whoa! I've read Treasure Island many, many times, and actually, but it has been a while, so I'm really looking forward to that. I've read the Tarzan books. I don't even want to know how many times, but again, it's been a while. So early on, I read them many times, and then they went by the wayside. Haggard, I think I read those back. I've only read She, and I've read King Solomon's Mines, I think once each, and a very long time ago. Probably almost be a fresh read for me. I don't really remember much. Robinson Crusoe, I think I read an abridged kids version. And I did not know there was another another part to it. I'm not even sure what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's the original title was The Farther Adventures of Robinson Crusoe, but it's usually been reprinted as Further Adventures.
Oh,
For some
okay.
reason.
So not Adventures of His Father then.
No.
Okay. Good.
Just a little more distance than where he was.
We used to do that with 20,000
Next
Leagues
island.
Under the Sea, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, people thought it was 20,000 leagues under the sea. No, it's 20,000 leagues under the sea. You know?
Ah, I never knew that. Yeah, of course.
The Mariana
Yeah,
Trench
of course
isn't
it
that deep,
is.
probably.
Yeah.
There's nothing that would be pretty deep.
Yeah, the Mariana Trench doesn't even get that.
No.
I shouldn't have admitted that. I should have just sat there quietly.
You're not the only one. You're not the only one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh?
You know, that's a book. Speaking of adventure book, I don't think has really had the English translation it deserves.
Most of his stuff hasn't.
Why?
Don't know. It's like they would change stuff. Like I was reading that it was an introduction, I think, to the Penguin Journey to the Center of the Earth, and it's just most of them are just terrible. Like he'd say something bad about England or English, so they translate it as if he's saying something good about them. You know?
I can believe that.
I
didn't
mean,
know.
what a treasure, though. You know, if somebody, you know how like the Valonskis or whatever, however you say it, did all the Russian stuff. What if we had somebody, or Weaver with the Italian stuff? What if we had somebody like that just said, "I'm going to do Jules Verne right"? I mean, because he's a major world figure.
Yeah. Well, there's the Ellsworth that's doing Dumas now. Yeah. No, like. I really hope he just continues. I hope he does a lot more stuff, you know, and it'll be great. But yeah, that's adventure stuff right there. But also too, other thing, like, you know, there's more things coming for August of Adventures as well, but we'll talk about that. We got another middle mark and I have another video that'll be out on Wednesday that will cover other things that we're doing. But
sorry.
What?
Nothing. Sorry. I just heard that will cover, and then of course I was thinking of Jason again, and it just kind of, you know.
That Harrigan guy's trouble. I'm telling you.
But yeah, so watch this space, and I hope that everybody will like the August of Adventures, because you know you don't have to read what we're reading. It's just anything, and I'm hoping what we're really hoping is there's no sort of spoiler, but for if it continues next year, I'd really like to get into the nonfiction like travel stuff, the explorers type stuff material as well. Like that would be sort of my theme for next year, would be that. And the only reason why I'm not doing it this year is because I don't have the time.
Could do it in April, I suppose. You know, have April for nonfiction and August for fiction. But no, I'm only kidding. We've got enough going on. We've got enough. So for now.
So yeah, so that's what we're doing, and so I don't see any other questions except the very last question there.
Yeah.
So on that note, I think we'll end the scream. Mark will be running away screaming.
Yeah, for sure.
Nightmares tonight. Okay, well, thanks for everybody for stopping by, and this has been fun. And thanks, Mark, for joining me, because it's been enjoyable, and it. I hope we can do something like this again, maybe a little more, on a different topic, possibly. You know, I'm not sure what. We covered quite a few bases here.
Yeah, I appreciate you both inviting me, and I had a great time. Well, for the most part.
Well, you had alcohol. We didn't.
I never get to drink it. I'm so over here yabbering so much, I'm not doing my job.
Oh, dear.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, as another topic, yeah, I guess we could do that.
Yeah.
You haven't had enough me droning on about classic or golden age science fiction, everybody.
Yeah, we could talk about that guy. What's his name?
Similac.
That's right.
I think some people are getting tired of him as well.
You're talking about me or Similac? All right, I asked for it.
Okay, it's coming up. 4 seconds, 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second, 2 hours. So,
Bye,
thank you,
everyone.
everybody, and bye.
Bye.